Hello, everybody. I'm Derek Arden, and welcome to Monday Night Live. Tonight, I got a very special guest, Tracy Hooper, who has been on the show several times. Her book, The Now Hello, is a bestseller, and I was privileged to meet Tracy and her husband at Heathrow in August, and we spent the afternoon on the River Thames on an Uber boat going down to Greenwich, looking at the Cutty Sark, and more importantly, having a couple of pints in a pub that was built before America was discovered. So, Tracy, welcome to Monday Night Live again. It's absolute honor and privilege to see you, and fantastic to meet you in person.
Thank you, Derek. And I'll to start by talking about one of my takeaways, and that is there's nothing like being in person. Zoom has expanded our world. I met you through Patricia Fripp. Because of Zoom, I'm able to present today. All of us have found that our worlds have opened up, but there's nothing like being person to person, eyeball to eyeball. It was lovely to meet you and to share your wisdom with my husband, Henry, who's here today, and our daughter, Margaret. That's another takeaway. It's always helpful to have a millennial on your trip, and I'll get into that in a moment. May I share some photos of our fantastic trip?
Please do. That'd be fantastic. Go
Great.
for it.
Um, as some of you know, my business is called the Confidence Project. And part of the Confidence Project is, really the theme is it how you carry yourself and communicate with confidence, and that confidence can be learned. It doesn't matter where you're from or how much money you make or your job title or where you went to school. These are skills that everyone can learn. And one of the tenets of the Confidence Project is first impressions. How do you carry yourself with confidence anytime you see someone? And as you all may know, our flight was delayed out of Seattle. And so then that made our flight to London 3 hours later than we thought it was going to be. But I was determined that I was going to look good to meet my friend Derek Arden. So I had bought a three-piece outfit, pants, top, and a jacket that they promised me was wrinkle-free. And as advertised, it was. And after our long overnight flight, I perked myself up, I fluffed my hair, I redid my lipstick, and I wanted to make a good first impression to Derek. And I'm overstating this, but the point is, we never get a second chance to make that good first impression. And I wanted to have a chance to meet you with gratitude. Derek met us at Heathrow, and now I'll begin to share my screen. We had a fantastic day together. Hold on, let me try this one. Let me know if you all can see this. Can you see this?
Yep, it's coming up. Yep,
Look at that.
fine.
We had a wonderful time. So check out my curly hair, you all. It sprinkled when we were going down the Thames. That's all it took for the hair to go crazy, but we had a marvelous time. And Derek negotiated all the way. He was negotiating for the cabbie rides we were taking to get there and the boat ride itself. It was so fun, wonderful. He said to Henry, Henry, you paid too much for the train. What are you doing paying that much for the train? You could have saved 10% or something. We had just a marvelous time. I really thought that the highlight would be the London Bridge, but in fact, that's not the highlight. Tell us, Derek, what is the bridge we all need to know about?
Well, the bridge that we're seeing in the background is called Tower Bridge. But of
Yes.
course, some of your American friends thought they were buying Tower Bridge because they purchased London Bridge. And I see a few wise people sold them London Bridge when they thought they were buying Tower Bridge. Now, I wasn't really sure whether that's a true story, but I believe it is a true story. And I believe that the London Bridge, has been rebuilt in the Arizona desert.
That was such a great story to tell. And that was one of the serendipitous opportunities of being in person that Derek could tell stories like that that we would have never known had we not been with somebody who's from the UK. And here we are having a pint, a great time. What was the name of that little spot, Derek? It was in Essex.
It was in Greater London, Tracy. It was
Ah,
called
thank you, thank
Greenwich.
you. I
Greenwich.
thought
The,
Greenwich, that's right,
the
Greenwich.
original Greenwich, not Greenwich Village or any of those copycat names that you've cheated in America, where the actual naval museum is, and where Nelson set sail from.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and we got all kinds of history, as you all can imagine. One of the treats for us was going to Hyde Park and Kensington Gardens. Look at my hat. Isn't it so cool? I wore it the whole time. Patricia Fripp, you would appreciate this hat, partially because it was hot. Not hot like it's been in the US, but it was quite warm and sunny. So I got myself a nice hat in Hyde Park. And we single-handedly contributed to the UK economy with the treats that we bought. There's Winston Churchill. This was at the Victory Services Club. Derek's father, um, thanks, served in World War II in North Africa, and we were able to stay at the Victory Services Club. Derek, can you tell everyone about the uniqueness of that
Yes,
club?
The Victory Services Club was founded in 1918 to allow people returning from the First World War from the trenches that had been gassed to have somewhere to stay in London to recuperate. And it's for all service people in the UK, whether it's the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force, but also for people whose parents served, they can become members as well. And through the Professional Speaking Association, through Ailey Milnes, who's sadly not long with us, she encouraged me to join, and I've encouraged a few other people. And of course, we can now allow our friends to stay there as long as we recommend them. And luckily, Tracy, I managed to just about write you a reference to stay there.
We scooted in.
You
Thank you for that. Talk about serendipity. Margaret said, our daughter Margaret lives in New York City and she is 37 and she traveled with us because we were invited to a wedding and she was in Ireland and she was friends with the bride as we are. Anyway, Margaret said, I'd love to go to a football game, but we looked at the prices and it was not in the budget. And Derek said, on our boat ride, I have an extra ticket to the Arsenal game. What are the chances one of you would like to go? Well, Margaret practically jumped out of her seat. So here's Derek before the Arsenal game wearing his merch, as they call it, but also talking to me about a speech he was giving the next day. And that was another value add of being in person. We got to talk about each other's work, the content of our businesses. So Derek was filling me in, and that was great fun. And then there are Derek and Margaret having a great time in person. The magic. That's another takeaway for me. The generosity of Derek to meet with Henry and me or twice before we made our trip, many emails back and forth, and then taking Margaret for this fabulous opportunity. Part of the Confidence Project, one of my presentations is called Confident Conversations. How do you start a conversation with someone who you don't know? How do you keep it going? How do you jump into a conversation that's already started? How do you get out of a conversation? And what I always encourage people to do is start conversations in a low-level lab. And this is an example with the cabbies in London of a low-level lab. You know you will never see these people again. Likely you will never see them again. So you can practice having conversations and using what I call the magic words to get a conversation started. What, how, and tell me more. How did you happen to become a cabbie? How long have you been doing this? What's your most interesting story? What's the most exciting thing that's ever happened in your cab? You learn to practice the back and forth of conversations. So often when we're in situations with people, it's either a monologue from us because we're nervous and we keep talking, or it's a monologue from the other person because they want to talk about themselves. I do believe that everybody's favorite subject is themselves. So when you ask them, tell me what's the most interesting part of your job, then you can get a conversation started. And a cabbie is one place. I tell people at the farmer's market, at a wedding reception, at the security line at the airport. These are all ways that you can get a conversation started. Another way to get a conversation started is to offer a compliment. It needs to be authentic. If you know something about the person, you could say, congratulations on the new client you've landed. Congratulations on your book being published. But also to say, thank you for having your cab be so clean. I always say that to Uber drivers in the US. I thank them. Thank you for having a clean car. And at the end of the conversation, when I'm getting out of the car, I'll often say, thank you for a safe trip. I want them to know that I appreciate them. Low-level lab. Another observation was courtesy. I thought this was astonishing. This was in the tube. You can see on the left, someone may need this seat more. And another seat, please offer this seat. And that happened to me. There was the young man who you can see behind me with the blue shirt and the earbuds in. He was sitting in that seat that said, please offer this seat. And he looked up to me and said, would you like to sit down? And I said, yes, thank you very kindly. Margaret and Henry and I walked over 100 miles during our 3 weeks in the UK and Ireland. And every single day we were walking, I was quite happy to sit down. But I thought that's another takeaway. I believe confidence is contagious. When you're with a confident person, it's uplifting. It makes you feel good about yourself because they're bringing out the best in you. But I also believe that courtesy is contagious. When we are kind and courteous to other people, it makes them be kind and courteous to us in many circumstances. And this is an opportunity where someone had the brilliant idea to put on a chair, on a seat, someone may need this seat more. I love that. Thank you for that. And there's Margaret and Henry. It's great to have a millennial on your trip. Margaret is, of course, used to the subway system in New York City, and she knows it like the back of her hand, where she was able to do the same in the tube. Henry is quite good with directions, but it wasn't always easy, but Margaret was our ace in the hole, so to speak. I overheard someone say during our trip, oh, we Brits love our queues. We love to queue. And I thought that was so funny. We love to queue. And so here's a queue outside of the Museum of Natural History. And people talked with each other. They were even talking with people they didn't know. This line was quite short, but ahead of us, it was winding around. Margaret had the smart idea to get tickets ahead of time. So that really helped us to get into a lot of the museums. But I thought that was really funny. We Brits like our queues. Here's more queuing. We had to see platform 9 3/4. And look at this, you all. Look on the right, they have a fan. They give people the scarves, and they have a fan that blows the scarf away so it looks like the wind is blowing. Isn't that funny? And I'm telling you, there was a queue. Look at this queue for people to have their picture taken.
Tracy, I think we better stop and explain this for people that don't know,
Oh,
perhaps.
okay.
So
Go
at
ahead, Derek.
King's Cross Station, which is on the way to, in theory, Harry Potter, there's a Harry Potter shop. And outside the Harry Potter shop, there's a platform 9 3/4 where you can have your photo taken. Now, when I go to Arsenal, there's a huge queue outside of this. And I'm thinking, what are these people doing? This is absolutely crazy. And people queue up for a couple of hours outside the Harry Potter shop to have their picture taken with platform 9 3/4 and with that half trolley, of course. So yeah, great marketing, of course. Great marketing by the Harry Potter shop, who hopes to sell you things afterwards.
Indeed. And there were lots of people of all ages. It wasn't just little ones. There were some adorable children dressed up as Harry Potter characters in the movie and in the books. But I mean, that's a grown up. That's a full-fledged grown up who couldn't wait to have his picture taken. It was great fun.
Well, what about you? Hang on a minute, Tracy. What about you and Henry and Margaret? You know, you clearly wanted to go and have your picture taken there. So
Well, truth be told, Margaret wanted to do it. That was fine. We got there and we saw the line, and she said, I don't really want it that badly. But it was fun. And there wasn't only a line to have your picture taken, there was a line to get into the Harry Potter shop that snaked around for probably 50 people in line who weren't even in the shop itself. This is another just a I just love your museums. And Henry and I were talking this morning about the reverence that you have for your museums, for your churches, for your palaces. And uh, this is the big blue whale that you see when you walk in the door of the Museum of Natural History. We just had the best time. And at the end of 3 hours there, I don't have a picture of this, but they have, and Henry might be able to help me, they have a huge, enormous tree that is one of the oldest trees in the world, or one of the oldest trees in Britain. Anyway, it was up a huge flight of steps. Henry was so excited to see that tree and all the rings of the tree that he went 2 steps at a time after we had been there for 3 hours. It was, every part of it was exhilarating. Not only the exhibits, but the architecture, the tile, the floors, the walls. We respect that, I mean, in our family so much, and we appreciate how much people really want to go and have their children and their grandchildren see these fantastic places. There's Henry, looking very serious, Henry, I might add. What was that tree, by the way, Henry?
It
Do you
was
remember?
a sequoia.
It was a sequoia. And do you remember how old it was? How many rings?
Well, it was almost 3,000 years old, so before the time of Christ.
Yeah, marvelous. We had such a good time. All right, now let's talk about words to lose and words to use. That's my signature program. What words do we lose that make us sound hesitant and uncertain? And how can we replace those with words to use that have influence? And I was struck by this because oftentimes in the US, people say, I know my stuff. There's so much stuff in this report. And I think to myself, stuff in this report, it's data, it's metrics, it's the numbers. That stuff is rubbish. So I thought I might put this in one of my programs, litter. Litter sounds better than stuff. I mean, wouldn't say that about I know my litter, but I know my stuff. But it was fun to see, and I love this time to bin your gum. I love that. I thought that was great. And another overused expression in the UK, in the US, and perhaps in the UK sometimes, is over saying I'm sorry when you don't need to. Of course, it's, I thought this was wonderful. In Oxford, all the buses are electric, but sorry, not in service. And on the lower left hand, sorry, we're closed. That's completely normal to say I'm sorry. Sorry, cash only. That was from a cabbie. But how often are you in situations where there are two people going for the same door and you say, oh, sorry? Or you could say, after you. Going down the aisle at the grocery store or in some kind of a shopping with a cart and you say, oh, sorry, I'll move my cart. Oh, you don't need to say that. You could say good morning or good afternoon, or going into a crowded elevator. Oh, sorry, go ahead. And you don't want to, oh, sorry, it's okay. No, you go ahead. You could say, I have a meeting that starts in 4 minutes. Would you mind if I went ahead of you? Thanks very much. When we over apologize, it chips away at our confidence. It sends a message that we're making all kinds of mistakes when we're not. And it's exhausting, in my view, to over apologize. I thought it interesting that these were ways that we can apologize. And of
I do,
course,
I do think, Tracy, that in Britain we probably say sorry a lot of times. But I do think there's a defensive mechanism. As a London boy, you never know if the person that you're just about to bump into is a threat and bigger than you. And I've thought about this a lot since we discussed it. And I think that might be the reason. It might be that amygdala, which is the defensive part of the brain, just looking after us. Who knows?
yeah, maybe. It's an interesting habit. We all have expressions that we don't want to use. And for instance, I will say sorry is one. Another is jargon. Jargon are expressions that are overused or that people may not understand. But I have some fun jargon to share from the Brits, which I love. I would call these adorable words. Brilliant. I hear that a lot. I heard that a lot in the UK. No worries. Cheers. Proper. We're taking a proper vacation. I love that. See it, say it, sort it. We heard that all over the train station and the airport. And dodgy. And here's what we say in the US: overused, super, amazing. How many situations can be amazing? Here's another one we overuse in the US: awesome. Awesome? There are not many experiences in the world that are awesome. And if we overuse it, then it dilutes the word. Another word that words that we use too much, in my view, are and like. It was like the most, like the most fantastic trip. My suggestion for that, I'm going right into coaching mode, is to pause before you use those words. There's power in pause. If your word that you're using too much is just, I just have a quick question. I'm just wondering. I'm just circling back. I just want to say really fast. When we use those weak words, those words to lose, it really diminishes our presentation, our delivery. And if you pause right before you use a word, it gives you a chance to gather your own thoughts, and it helps the other person to get ready for what you're about to say. Here we go. Everybody's on their cells, everybody. Everybody all over the world is on their cell phone. And it was interesting because I thought this woman, I loved her outfit. She was on her cell phone. I took her picture. And then she glanced away for a moment. And I said, I love what you're wearing. And her whole countenance changed. She got a smile on her face. She stood up straighter. And I thought those small conversations that we have with people, those small courtesies, can make a big difference in the way people respond to us. So there you have it. Our wonderful trip to the UK.
Wow, that was fantastic, Tracy. I was just looking at some of your pictures. You didn't tell us where they were, but I noticed it was Oxford, because the yet very sort of yellow orange sandstone is from Oxford. It did have an Italian look about it when I looked carefully there. But
Yeah.
that was brilliant. Just a few things from me. I remember you being quite startled when I went into one of my London accents with the cabbie from Paddington and asked him whether he was a West Ham supporter or a Millwall supporter, because he was clearly from the East End, and I was trying to connect with him. And football teams and cabbies are usually a pretty good bet. He was pretty overawed, that cabbie, and you were showing a picture of him when you gave him a £5 tip for quite a short fare. He loved it, and he was your best friend when you dropped it, and he was thanking me as well as the Brit as your host, which was great. I'm a bit nervous about Patricia Fripp coming over and spending about 2 days in the Natural History Museum after your 3 hours recommendations. But what about Dublin? What was your you went to Ireland. What was your what did you think of Dublin?
We had a lovely time. We were there for a wedding of a friend's daughter who lives here in Portland, and it was at the Luttrellstown Castle right outside of Dublin, which was absolutely magnificent. Evidently, David Beckham and his wife got married at this castle. They have over 100 weddings a year at this castle. It was just beautiful. And it was black tie, so Henry had to take his tuxedo, and I took a long dress, and Margaret had a long dress too. But we had a wonderful time in Dublin. And then we decided to go north. So we went to Belfast, and Henry's family is from Ireland. His seventh great grandfather came over here in 1800 to the US in 1800, and he was in the textile industry. So Henry really wanted to learn more about that. And one of the highlights for us, you all, was the Titanic Museum. Raise your hand if you've been to the Titanic Museum. Oh, oh, Will, George, it's marvelous. We were completely overwhelmed. Number one, shame on me. I did not know the Titanic was built in Belfast. And they are very proud of that. And the museum is extraordinary. It's very hands-on. There's one part where you walk into this one area and you feel as if you're on the ship itself. And another part, you can get into a car, two at a time, and you go down into the belly of the ship, physically go down to take a ride. It's marvelous. If anyone else wants to share their takeaways, that was a complete surprise for us. We loved that.
Fantastic.
Gotta just say that I've visited several times because one of my sons lives in Belfast and he's got 3 kids and they absolutely love it. But, you know, it's one of those things we go to regularly because there's just so much stuff there. You can't do it in one trip.
No, no. In fact, we met Henry's nephew. His brother's son lives right near Belfast. We met them for lunch and we spent 3 hours visiting with this young man, Ian, and his girlfriend, Emma. And by the time we were ready to go into the museum, they had to leave. And we thought, oh, that's such a shame. Well, they could have only been in the museum for a half hour. We were there for 3 hours. We couldn't get enough of it. It was marvelous. The other treat in Ireland was that we took a boat. Henry, you'll have to help me with the name of the island. We took a boat to an island that has 110 residents, and it's a bird sanctuary. And what's it called, honey?
Rathlin Island.
Rathlin Island.
So I think it's the only island off of Ireland that has a population of what, Tracy? 100?
110. And they're looking for volunteer. We were there. Henry's a birder, and we were hoping there would be some exciting birds for him to see. The birding season has passed, but they were looking for volunteers from all over the world to come spend between 2 and 4 weeks being a guide on the island, a birding guide. So I said to Henry, well, that's an interesting opportunity. I'll go write my next book on the island, and you can be a birding professional.
Brilliant. And lastly, you were keen to go to Kew Gardens, and I sent you a text saying which is the quickest way to get to Kew Gardens, because I thought it was a bit difficult till I did a bit of research for you. You got there in the end, did you?
Oh, we got there. I could show you a whole afternoon of our photographs there. Another takeaway for me was how wonderful it was to see families together. And Kew is, I think it took us 55 minutes to get there by train. We were impressed with all the transportation, timely, clean. It was wonderful. And Kew Gardens was wonderful. I got these bags for my girlfriends who are coming to visit Kew, and I got these wonderful soaps at Kew Gardens. One of the highlights for us at Kew and also at the Natural History Museum was the research that's being done. At Kew, it's not just the unusual plants and flowers and trees, but it's also the research they're doing about plants that are used for medicinal purposes, plants that are being used to protect the environment, plants that absorb the carbon dioxide. That was very exciting. And at the Natural History Museum on the 4th floor, which people may not even get to, there was this whole beautiful exhibit about scientists who are collecting moths and mosquitoes and the like to protect us from diseases. So it wasn't so much history as it was moving towards the future. And I really admired that about, in particular, those two institutions.
Fantastic.
We can't wait to come back.
Well, I'll be meeting you at Heathrow, but don't be 3 hours late. Tracy, we've almost run out of time. Will you stay on afterwards and answer some questions? But could you give, for people watching this on the recording, one tip for 2026, because we're almost 3 months away? One piece of advice from Tracy Hooper, all the way from Portland, Oregon, 5,000 miles away from Guildford in Surrey.
My one tip is whenever you can, meet someone in person, have coffee in person, have dinner in person, go to the theater in person. Gather. We need to gather. It's so important to have that human-to-human contact. That would be my takeaway.
Fantastic, Tracy. Can I ask members of Monday Night Live to give Tracy the usual vote of thanks? Thanks so much, Tracy, for sharing your trip, but also making it so exciting and so many takeaways and learning points. Tracy Hooper, thank you so much.
My pleasure.